essentially what happened is that it was a cyber attack or a ransomware attack by a cyber criminal gang called DarkSide. And this was according to the FBI. This led to the oil pipelines to be shut down until ransom was paid. DarkSide also stole 100 gigabytes worth of data from the Colonial Pipelines and threatened to release data on the internet if the ransom wasn't paid. And ultimately, Colonial Pipelines did cave, and they actually paid the online gang DarkSide $5 million worth of Bitcoin, which is a shit ton of money. And let's go and start off by taking a look at what happened as a result of the cyber attack. So obviously, the biggest thing was the gas shortages. The gas shortages, you clearly saw prices were spiking up. There was only a limited amount of fuel to be obtained. And then what happened as a result of that is panic buying. You saw people further exacerbate the shortages by being complete imbeciles and hoarding gas. Like, literally, there are memes and pictures circulating on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere of all these and I'm going to say too, all these idiots that are filling trash bags with gasoline, that are buying dozens of gas cans to fill up with gas, to getting the massive, like 60, 80 gallon water tanks that are meant for like power washing or pressure washing, stuff like that. They're filling that with gasoline. And again, that is the dumbest thing to do. Why? Well, because what happened as a result of the panic buying, it further exacerbated the supply chain and it made the gas shortage only worse. So instead of the gas prices, or the economy and the capitalist system naturally allowing the gas prices to level out based off of consumer demand with supply and demand. Instead, you saw basically a bunch of people completely abuse and just strain the system in the most illogical way. And I don't know if that made sense or not, but it's what also happened as a result of the gas shortages was also food shortages. So what you started seeing across the eastern states is that because there was no gas to be able to transport food, it led to limited resources being transported to the different grocery stores and all that stuff. And then on top of that, because then you had people becoming so super irrational that they're all thinking, oh, I gotta buy everything and hoard it all. So they start buying up all the food supplies. They start buying up even more gas and everything. It further exacerbates the gas supply chains. It further exacerbates the food chains because they're not able to meet with the demand. And honestly, a perfect example of this is the Arab oil embargo. The Arab oil embargo was a situation that happened during the Nixon administration when Richard Nixon had given aid to Israel. And OPEC, OPEC has basically an absolute monopoly over the world's oil supply. I think they own like over 70% of the world's oil supply chain. And this is primarily consisted of a lot of Middle Eastern countries, and a lot of these Middle Eastern countries within the OPEC system are not on the good side of the U.S. and vice versa. And so what happened during the Arab oil embargo is that Richard Nixon provided aid to Israel during their wartime or whatever was going on back then. And in response to the aid, OPEC actually slapped the U.S. with an embargo. And this ultimately caused the prices to skyrocket on gas, and it led to a bunch of mess and issues. And then because you had Richard Nixon, he tried to enact a type of socialist principles in regards to fixed pricing. So he was trying to manually set the prices for gasoline rather than the economy allow it to fluctuate on its own. He was manually setting the prices, and then he was limiting, like, okay, you can only get gas on these days, other days, stuff like that. And that was the issue with government overreach. But ultimately what happened during the Arab oil embargo is gas shortages. Prices were starting to shoot up. You had people in lines trying to get as much gas as they can. And then you also saw people stealing each other's gas. The gas stations during the Arab oil embargo, which is like, if I remember correctly, during the 70s, it was the mid to late 1900s where this took place, but you saw people resorting to criminalistic behavior by either siphoning gas from other people's gas tanks or just stealing it straight from the gas station. And it got so bad that they had to lock their gas tanks and lock the gas stations up so that way people aren't stealing it, but people were still breaking into it. But the direct comparison between the cyber attack and how society in those regions responded to the shortages versus the Arab oil embargo is pretty spot on. We're seeing a historical reference with the Arab oil embargo where people became irrational and stupendously idiotic and decided to resort to panic buying and hoarding, which, guess what? When you panic buy and you hoard, a lot of the resources that you bought tends to go to waste. And that's what makes it even more dumb, and that's what creates even bigger issue. But you're seeing those two direct comparisons, and I guarantee, whether the news wants to cover or not right now because of there's so much media bias, I can guarantee that during these gas shortages across the eastern states, there were people that were siphoning gas, that were breaking into gas stations, doing whatever they can to get gas, maybe even getting in fistfights. We saw that happening during the pandemic over fucking toilet paper. Like, literally, I remember seeing on Facebook, there's a video of this chick who was getting in a fist fight with this mom and then her daughter, and the daughter was like, looked like she was in her 30s, but they were straight up getting in a fist fight because the mom and daughter had like 7 or 8 massive things of toilet paper and water, and just completely took what was left, and the other chick didn't have anything. They ended up getting a fist fight. But we're seeing those commonalities between the Arab oil embargo as well as what's happening now with the cyber attack. And by the way, this is being recorded May 17th, so and it'll probably be posted by the end of this week, so any changes will kind of fall out of that. But you're seeing how irrational people started behaving as well. And again, it creates a domino effect where the gas shortages then pertains to the food shortages as we have seen, and then it pertains to other issues in regards to, okay, how can people actually get to work? When gas shortages occur and people are hoarding the gas, it then exacerbates the people who are trying to act like proper, responsible individuals and are trying to get to work. So it creates a whole different mess, and because the economics is such a confusing and just all around messed up thing, there's so many factors there's so much that happens as a ripple effect from this one thing. But yeah, and so then what I also wanted to talk about in regards to the gas shortages and the food shortages is what should have been the appropriate response. Well, we know, for example, with the Arab oil embargo with Richard Nixon, when he tried to regulate gasoline as well as the prices, when consumers can be able to get gas and stuff like that, it didn't fucking work. It, in fact, only made the situation worse. Why? Because the government just isn't fully capable of handling issues like that. It's not so much as... It's like... Or, what was my point? It's not so much about what the government can do to help it. It's a matter of if they could actually do anything to help it. Because you saw with the Arab oil embargo, when the government stepped in to try to help things with the situation, only made the gas shortages worse. And of course, there could be different scenarios as well where some type of government hand can come in and actually provide benefit to the situation, but that depends on who is the one behind the government to fix the issues, because you have to look at the people behind it that are trying to influence it in which way. Are they going to try to use it to capitalize on their own agenda and make the situation worse, like during the Richard Nixon era? Or are they going to try to actually look at the issues, see what different problems are occurring, what stems from it, what could possibly happen, and what are the right steps to take in order to best get it to flow properly? Because one of the books I recently finished was The American Government. Literally read it from front to back. Fucking my brain fried from it. But it was talking about how the U.S. government literally has no fucking clue. No clue at all on how to properly and fully handle the economy. Because it's such a confusing and multi-dimensional system that the government just isn't capable of handling. So the gas shortages and the food shortages, there's only so much that the government can do without there being too much overreach and restricting rights. So this falls on a societal issue in regards to the gas shortages and the food shortages. What should have been the appropriate response to do this? Well, the appropriate response to the gas shortages and the food shortages is to ration. You saw it during the Great Depression. You saw it during World War I and II as well. Historical factors of people rationing their food and their supplies in order for our soldiers overseas to be able to have those resources and supplies to defend our country and to protect us from what was going on back then. The rationing should have been the appropriate response, because what happens in a capitalistic system in regards to the shortages and the supply and demand is that basically in a capitalist economy, what happens is when the gas shortages occur and the food shortages occur, in order to accommodate the consumer demand, the prices must go up. Now, if people don't want the prices to go up and they don't want it to stay up, what do? You ration. You conserve what you get and you conserve what you have. So during the Arab oil embargo, one of the solutions to fixing the gas shortages then was to carpool, to conserve how often you go out and everything. And the government did try to go in and try to force people to control how much transportation occurs, which backfired because it's clear overreach. But the responsible end on society's part in this situation with the gas shortages and the food shortages is, rather than panic buying and hoarding the resources like a jackass, and I say that with genuine meaning, because when you hoard and you panic buy, you are putting others at risk, in the sense as you are restricting not only their supplies, but you are exacerbating the supply chain and could contribute to even further issues and more problems. So the appropriate response during the shortages is to ration. It is to conserve what you get and what you have. So, like, for example, with the toilet paper and with water, stores began restricting it to where you can only buy one per customer. So that's rationing in order to be able to accommodate and limit the consumer demand, so that way the supply can be able to match the demand. And then when the supply is able to match the demand, then you're able to see prices get better. You're seeing things resolve. So that it's what the people across the eastern states that were hoarding and panic buying all the gas and all the food and everything, what they should have done is that they should have, as I keep on saying, they should have rationed what they get, do the best that they can to conserve it, whether it's by limiting how much traveling you do, carpooling, stuff like that. By collectively as a society doing that, you're going to lower the consumer demand and allow the supply chain to build itself back up. Once the demand lowers and the supplies increases, well, what happens then is that the supply needs to be sold, or else the value is only going to diminish more and more and more. So when the supply is up here and the demand's down here, you're going to see the prices of the resources dwindle down until it's able to meet the consumer demand and what they're willing to pay for it. So if that would have been followed, which it's of course because of all the shit that goes on, you never know how long the rationing and stuff goes like that. So you have to be rational and logical human beings to be able to basically have common sense. Have common sense on, okay, how long is this going to go out? Look at what's going on around you and what's the best route to go. And what really sucks too, though, is that while there is a lot of good people, there's a lot of bad people too who like to take advantage of the system. And that's just an unfortunate truth. So this is especially when it comes to stuff like this, when you try to allow the government to step in and start to regulate too much of this stuff, first you have to raise the question of whether or not they have the authority to do so. If they do have the authority to do so, okay, what's the route to go and what is the most effective way to go? When you have government trying to come in and try to regulate this stuff, you start to deal with client politics where you have interest groups that are going to try to get their own agenda across going and everything. So it's, whenever it comes to shortages, only more problems stem from more government overreach within the system, but more problems stem from society itself not handling the situation properly. So for the people that across the eastern states, I guarantee you, if they hadn't hoard or panic or done all the panic buying with the gas and the food, the shortages would have been fixed and handled a lot quicker. Especially too because you saw Colonial Pipeline, they had to pay the $5 million ransom. And it's because their supplies were getting so exhausted for what they had that they had no choice. And the fact that you had people in society that was hoarding and panic buying so much gas, that only put Colonial Pipelines in a worse situation because their demand is only increasing. But crap, they have no product, they have no service to offer, so they're going to be losing money. And ultimately what happened as a result is that you had Colonial Pipeline cave to the cyber criminal gang and pay the $5 million.